That day started like any other. I was at home trying to organize things before leaving for work. My grandmother always said that I should contact the building's caretaker to solve the problems in the apartment. But, to be honest, I didn't even know if it was worth the effort. The sink had been a problem before, and he always promised to send a plumber, but he never did. I decided to try to solve it myself. There I was, staring at that annoying leak, not knowing what to do, when an idea came to me. Mr. Renato, who lives in the apartment across the street, is known in the building for being a real handyman. I was a little embarrassed to ask for help, but necessity spoke louder. I had no other alternative. I went to his door, knocked and waited. When he opened it, the smile he gave me was so welcoming that all my shyness disappeared. He had a calm air, as if nothing could upset him. I explained the problem and, a little embarrassed, asked if he could take a look. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed the toolbox and went with me. While he worked on the sink, I stayed close by, trying to follow what he was doing. He explained each step with admirable patience. It was incredible how he seemed to have fixed 100 similar sinks before. I don't know if it was his skill or his calm tone of voice, but something made me want to stay there. When he finished, I thanked him from the bottom of my heart, and he just smiled, saying it was something simple. Even so, I insisted on making him a coffee as a way of saying thank you. Later, I took the coffee to his apartment. I intended to just give it to him and leave, but he invited me in. We sat on the balcony and started talking. He had so many interesting stories. He talked about the places he had been and the people he had met. I was fascinated. I had never heard anyone share experiences with such enthusiasm and richness in detail. Over time, I realized that he was unique. It wasn't just because of his age or his experience, but because of the way he listened, the calmness he conveyed, the genuine attention he gave. He seemed to see more than words. That conversation stayed with me for days. From then on, our meetings became frequent, always casual, as if chance had pushed us together. He would ask if the problems in the apartment had been resolved, if I needed anything, and I would make up excuses to prolong the conversation. One afternoon, he invited me to help him organize some boxes that were piling up in the living room. I accepted without hesitation. While we were organizing the boxes, he asked me why I always seemed so alone. I explained that, between work and studies, it was hard to find someone worthwhile. He laughed, saying that he found that hard to believe. I felt embarrassed, but that comment resonated with me. A few days later, he invited me to dinner. He said he wanted to prepare something special and that I deserved a break from my routine. Without thinking twice, I accepted, but I knew it was more than just an invitation. On the night of the dinner, he welcomed me with a carefully set table and soft music playing in the background. It was like a scene straight out of a book. During the meal, he asked me about my dreams, about what I wanted for the future. No one had ever asked me that question before. When the evening was over, he walked me to the door. I thanked him, and when we said goodbye, he held my hand for a moment. It was a simple gesture, but full of meaning. I went home with my heart racing, trying to understand what I was feeling. It was something completely new to me. Over the next few days, our conversations continued. Each time we spoke, I felt more connected. He had a way of seeing life that made me rethink everything I believed. It was as if, for the first time, I was discovering something important about myself. One day we were sitting on Mr. Renato's porch, watching the sunset in silence. After a while, he broke the peaceful atmosphere with a question that caught me off guard. What I thought about the age difference between people. I tried to change the subject, but he insisted, saying that we often create obstacles that shouldn't exist. I understood that he was talking about us, but I couldn't admit it. I just smiled slightly and replied that, in the end, age was just a number. After that conversation, something changed between us. We started seeing each other more often, and the looks we exchanged were no longer the same. They had a meaning that neither of us dared to put into words, but that we both felt. Mr. Renato was no longer just my neighbor. He was becoming someone special in my life, in a way I never imagined. Even though I didn't know what the future held, one thing was certain. I wanted to find out. Ever since that dinner, it seemed like my world had gained new nuances. It wasn't just about him, but about the way I was seeing life. Every morning brought with it an expectation, a desire to get up and enjoy the day, because there was a chance to see him, to hear one more of his stories. It was a strange feeling, but at the same time, it made perfect sense. Our encounters began to happen naturally. One afternoon, he showed up at my door with an old book in his hands. He said he thought I would like it, and he was right. The yellowed pages held words that touched me. It was as if he knew more about me than I did. As time went by, a new routine emerged between us. I would stop by his apartment to have coffee, and he would show up at mine to help with something or simply to talk. Many nights ended on the balcony, where we would talk about everything and nothing at the same time. He had a way of transforming even the simplest subjects into something profound. It was an unhurried conversation, where each sentence seemed to have a special weight. One afternoon, he asked me to help him take care of the plants in the building's garden. I laughed, because I was always awkward with this, but I accepted. He said I would be surprised, and he was right. Each plant seemed to have a story, and he cared for them with such care that it was impossible not to be infected. While he was showing me how to prune one of the plants, our hands touched again. It was a brief touch, but enough to bring back that feeling of butterflies in my stomach that I already knew. Things became more obvious one night when he invited me to dinner again. But this time, the conversation took a different direction. He wanted to know about my fears, about what held me back in life. I told him that sometimes I was afraid of not being enough, of not being able to achieve what I dreamed of. He looked at me with that calm way and said that I was much more than I imagined, that I just needed to believe in myself. When he walked me to the door that night, the silence that surrounded us seemed to speak louder than any words. I stood there, still, staring at him, trying to decipher what was happening. Then he took my hand again. This time, he didn't let go. The moment seemed suspended in time, as if the whole world had stopped just for the two of us. That's when I knew. This was the beginning of something I couldn't yet name, but that I already knew was special. After that, we started to really go out. Renato took me to a lovely place by the sea, where we sat, just listening to the sound of the waves and sharing stories about our lives. It was on that day that he told me things he had never shared with anyone. About the wife he lost, about how he thought he would never find someone who made him feel alive again. I listened to it all in silence, not knowing exactly what to say, but feeling that it created an even stronger bond between us. Of course, things weren't that simple. The fear of people's judgment was always there, like a shadow. The age difference was evident, and I knew it would attract looks and comments. But at the same time, it didn't seem to matter. What we had was real, and that was what really mattered. One night, while we were on the balcony of his apartment, Renato asked me what I thought about loving someone so different from me. I answered honestly. Love doesn't choose age or circumstances, and if it made sense to us, that's what mattered. He smiled tenderly, but I could tell he still had doubts. I think deep down he was afraid he would hurt me or that I might regret it one day. The first time he introduced me as more than just his neighbor was during a lunch with his friends. It was a simple meeting, but I knew how much it meant. Renato introduced me with such pride that my heart skipped a beat. At first, I felt curious looks and some implicit questions, but soon everyone started treating me naturally. It was as if they realized that what was between us was genuine. From then on, things became lighter. We started planning little trips and walks around the neighborhood. He taught me to value the simple things in life, things I had never stopped to appreciate. Every moment with him seemed unique, as if even the most everyday details carried a special meaning. But not everything was perfect. Sometimes Renato would walk away, saying he had doubts about whether he was doing the right thing. He confessed that he was afraid of holding me back or being a burden in my life. That hurt because, for me, he was the opposite of that. He was the person who made me feel stronger, who gave me the courage to believe in myself. On one of those occasions, I took the initiative to call him to talk. I said that I understood his fears, but that this was also my choice. I knew what I wanted, and what I wanted was to be with him. For the first time, I felt that he believed in me completely. Renato wrapped me in a hug so strong that it seemed to convey everything he couldn't put into words. Every day by his side was a reminder that life can be surprising and beautiful, even when it doesn't follow the script we imagine. Did you like this story? Leave a comment telling us what you thought, and, if you've ever experienced something similar, share it with us. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any new content. Here on the channel, we always bring exciting stories, reflections and real experiences, all with great affection. Thank you for being here and being part of this journey. See you in the next video.